So the least busy times during early voting for the last couple of years have been between 8 and 10 o'clock. If we had the ability to set our own hours, we would start early voting at 10 o'clock. But I'm telling you now, if you don't want to see any crowds, go vote between 8 and 10 o'clock.
Okay. Another question is that people are still asking about is this whole thing about when your absentee ballot is stamped. Does the post office actually stamp it, the mail-in ballots? Could there be some that didn't get stamped? And how can we make sure if we're close to that edge that you said, Greg,
Right.
what do we do to make sure that ours is stamped correctly?
It's a great question because especially after the election, that's a huge issue. The mail associated with elections has that kind of weird sort of little wavy logo on it, and that's supposed to identify official election mail. In the normal course of events, the only mail that gets postmarked is that with stamps, first-class stamps that need to be canceled. So your typical computer-generated stamp or even metered mail doesn't get postmarked because they've already been canceled. By law, the Postal Service is supposed to postmark any mail with that official election mail logo on it, but that just sort of doesn't happen. And sometimes it backfires. So if a postal facility receives a bunch of postal mail that doesn't have a postmark on it, they'll go, oh, let's postmark this. And it may be the day after election day. And so what we have to do is to try and figure out when the mail went into the system and when it was received. So there are basically sort of 3 days after election day. You've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's a pretty safe bet that something that we receive on Wednesday was mailed on Tuesday. A lot of the cancellation of postmarks that we get are very fuzzy. They're sort of this dot matrix printed, and they're kind of obscure. So long story short is if you are mailing close to election day, you should go to the post office and you either ask them to hand stamp it in front of you, or you buy a stamp at the counter that's generated from the machine. Now, sometimes in the postal office, there are freestanding machines that will give you, that will print out stamps for you. That doesn't count. Or if you get stamps from stamps.com, they may have a date on them, those don't count. And they won't normally get canceled. But if you get your postage at the counter and a postal clerk prints it out of a machine, that is recognized as the time and the date that you put your stuff in the mail. So counter service is the best. You can also deliver it to the post office, not the post office, the Board of Elections office on election day, but you can't take it to a precinct polling place. The only place that you could take an absentee by mail ballot is either to the Board of Elections office or to an early voting site. But I really don't recommend you take it to an early voting site because you're just gonna have to stand in line and go through the, wait with everybody else. And if you're gonna do that, you might as well just early vote.
Right. And Greg, just to reemphasize two things that people are asking me privately. One of them is, yes, we have one stamp. We only need one first class stamp or one forever stamp. That's all it takes.
That's correct.
Also, we want to make sure that people know that there is no Board of Election downtown Raleigh any longer.
Right.
Their office has been moved to 1200 North New Hope Road. And so you can look them up and you can and find out how to get to their address and their hours. You cannot vote downtown. There is no voting. They did that last time around while they were moving, but this time you cannot vote downtown. You have to go to an early voting site on election day to your precinct. You can go to the Board of Election, but it's on 1200 North New Hope Road. Now,
so, but I don't want I want to add to that.
Okay.
So the site downtown, since we moved in North New Hope Road, the site downtown has been considered a satellite site. or alternative site. So it's an alternative Board of Elections site. It's not available to us because it's being used as the Emergency Operations Center for the COVID response. So our alternative site is the Wake County Commons facility off of Pool Road. And so even though it seems like it's just a regular site, it is the alternative Wake County site. So just wanted to add that.
Okay, and now another thing that folks have, I don't know if we got it straight because I'm still getting private questions here, so they must not quite get it, is this whole thing of how do I know I sent in my mail-in ballot, my absentee ballot, I'm really concerned, is it approved, it is okay? I know you're not gonna count it in the voting counts until election day, but how do I know that my absentee ballot is okay? So could you talk just a second about how they can go on and track their absentee ballot?
Sure. So there are three ways. One is there's always been a voter search on the Wake County, not the Wake County, the State Board of Elections website. And here I'll go with the flashcard again. And you can go to voter search, and there won't be information about your request, but you'll be able to see the basic status of your ballot. The next step is to go to when it becomes active in the next few days, the ballot tracking system, which will give you a little more detail about where your ballot is. I don't know exactly the information, but it'll be a little bit more than status. And so that's the sort of second main way. And the third main way is really just to call the Board of Elections office at 919-4040. Those people will have the most accurate information as to the status of your ballot. So if you haven't gotten, I mean, if you've gone into the ballot track system, you can put in your email or phone number, cell phone number, and you can get texts or email messages so that you don't have to keep checking all the time.
I would really say that this is a point where I've had many conversations with our chair of the North Carolina Board of Elections, many conversations with Greg and with several of the directors. And one of the things that they really emphasize over and over, if you're this concerned about your absentee ballot, you know, you might choose to early vote. It just might give you more comfort. I'm very comfortable with absentee voting. I've been doing it for years. I feel like it's going to be okay. But honestly, if it's going to cause a lot of stress and concern, early voting is going to be fine. In early voting, as Greg said, don't forget, they're going to have a social distance. All the staff will be wearing PPE equipment. Every booth is wiped down and clean between each voter. They have pens that are not reusable. You will not be using a pen over and over. So you're going to have a very safe situation to go into early voting if you choose to do that. Now, Greg, another thing that folks are concerned about is that the president yesterday was in Wilmington, and he did say that you could vote absentee, and then you could go vote in person, and you should try to do that to see if there's fraud in the system. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, and specifically in terms of the law?
Sure. So state law says it's felony if you vote twice, or if you induce somebody else to vote twice. And I was surprised that Attorney General Barr said that he didn't know the laws of the various states, because in a federal election, it is a federal offense to vote twice. And the punishment is a fine of up to $10,000 or 5 years in prison, or both. And so for him to abdicate his responsibility and say, I don't know what it is, it was kind of absurd to me. I didn't say that on national television, but there are various steps in place to catch and prevent people from trying to vote twice, and then even if by some stretch of the imagination or some flaw, somebody, one rabbit managed to get under the fence, that there will never be an opportunity to vote twice. Absentee and early voting ballots have unique identifiers, that's sort of a unique code on them, so that even if for some reason some sort of ballot gets away and somebody stuffs their ballot in the tabulator and runs out of the polling place on election day and they can't figure out what ballot it is, we can still go back and retrieve a ballot from early voting and absentee. And so that is like the worst possible scenario. But what happens is that every time, once your ballot's accepted during early voting or during the early voting and during absentee by mail process, your voter history marks that. So the next opportunity you have to vote, you won't be eligible. And so if you show up at early voting and try to vote, or on election day, you'll be told that you can't vote, and your options are to vote provisional. And if you go through that process and you know that you've already voted and you sign that form saying that you haven't voted already, that is the point at which you commit felony. Now, if you, it's possible that you may not remember because there's just so much information floating around. Well, the whole process of researching provisionals between election day and the canvass meeting the following week, so that's it'll be the sort of the following Thursday, so it's 7 plus 2 days. That allows for a determination as to whether your vote was valid. And the only reason that a provisional ballot would sort of get away from somebody is and there's sort of two scenarios. A provisional ballot is usually marked with the letter P. There's a rare occasion when a poll worker forgets to put that P on there, and somehow somebody takes their provisional ballot, and instead of putting it in the envelope and giving it back, they walk out and stuff it in the tabulator. And that's only happened one time in the time I've been on the board. But in that case, if that voter has voted already, in early voting or absentee, that can be located and removed.
Okay, so that sounds really good. And I think earlier someone may have jumped on later because this question's come back up about, I asked for an absentee ballot, I got it, and now I'm not feeling so good about that. I want to go to early vote. And what Greg said earlier, and Greg add in, just tear that in half, put it in your recycling bin, and don't worry about it. You don't have to worry.
I mean, ideally you want to destroy it, but if you want to frame it or laminate and turn it into a placemat, or or use Mod Podge to put it on your side table, that's fine. Just do not take it to the polling place, please. You'll be issued a new ballot, whether it's early voting or on election day. But don't.
That was the question someone said. So if I go, I've got my absentee ballot, I've laid it on my table, I'm not going to use it, I went and voted in person, does that automatically now cancel my absentee ballot? Yes.
Yes. If you try to vote it, it'll be recognized that you've already voted, and there'll be an attempt to vote twice.
Okay. And someone says here, if I go online and register to vote, now that, as you know, if you don't know, you can go online and register to vote if you have a driver's license or one of those IDs that are issued by the Department of Transportation. Yeah. So Greg, if you go online and register to vote, how do you know that that it worked, and how do you get your registration card, or how do you get an ID number if it's close to voting? What do I do?
So there is a voter ID number, but that's not, you don't need to know that. You just need to know that you are registered at your address, and you can look that up at the state website, the ncsbe.gov, and under the voter search, you can check to see that you are registered and the name that you're under, and it's pretty straightforward. And if you don't know how to do it, ask somebody. But you can also call the county board. I will say that in the past there have been sort of some delays. So DMV wasn't always the most prompt, but now it's more streamlined, and those kinks have been worked out. Because of COVID-19, we don't have so many in-person voter drives, but sometimes in-person voter drives can result in a delay in your information getting to the Board of Elections, because some organizations like to collect some of the data, even though state law says you're not allowed to retain certain personal data from a voter registration form. You're not even allowed to make copies of it. And that's, you know, that's sort of, the people who do those all the time know sometimes people want to do their own registration drives and they don't remember that. So it's just a long way of saying that sometimes there's a delay depending on how you have registered. And that includes some of the online sites that are not directly associated with State Board of Elections. They'll say, hey, come here and register to vote online. All it does is it sends you a voter registration form. It's not, you still have to complete that final step. And
so it's always best just to go straight to the source. Just go straight to the State Board of Elections, or which will have a link to the Department of Transportation. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, I will tell you that a young friend of mine did try to register to vote a week ago. And so she was trying to find out if it worked. She filled everything out. So she went in on the voter searched for her name, and she was there. So is that a way, an easy way to check to see if your registration is okay?
Yeah, that's that information is updated pretty much in real time. So, you know, a lot of data you see is sort of updated daily and or maybe weekly for registration statistics, but the actual voter registration information gets updated in real time.
Okay, so look, we're going to stay on. I know we're getting close to 8 o'clock. We started just a tad late, and we're going to stay on for a little bit longer so that we can make sure that if there's anyone here that did not get their question answered, if you would put it in the chat box right now, and you can put it directly to me or to everyone. And while I'm giving you a few minutes to do that, I just want to remind everybody that early voting does start October the 15th. It goes through October the 31st, as Greg said, at 3 o'clock. So we have 17 days. We have 20 sites, and all that information is on wakedup.com/elections. So please go check that out. There's plenty of options for early voting. And Greg, in terms of the last thing I would ask is that people are saying, what if somebody comes to my mailbox and steals my ballot? How do I defend myself?
So you will have the ability with the new tracking system to know when you're supposed to expect that. I'd also encourage people to sign up for the Postal Service Informed Delivery Service. It's not perfect, but I get an email every morning telling me what mail is supposed to be coming to me. And it's useful to know when stuff is delayed. And so for things that are important, you get a lot of junk mail, but for things that you're expecting that are important, it's a useful way to know how to do that. Okay. If you're expecting a ballot and the online information shows that it's been delivered and you never got it, you can contact the Board of Elections immediately and they can cancel that ballot and issue a new one.
Okay, let's say that one more time, because I think that is really important. I've also heard of people who have had their mail held, and then they got their mail, it was delivered to the wrong place, blah, 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 neighbors picked up the mail. So what Greg said is really important. If you've applied for a ballot, you're expecting the ballot, you haven't gotten it, call the Board of Elections if you're concerned, 919-404-4040, and say, I haven't got my ballot. If they say we mailed it, then this is an opportunity for you to say, I didn't get it, please cancel that, can I start all over again? And if you don't think there's enough time to start all over again, you'll have to go to early voting or to election day voting. So that's not a bad thing. So Bob, one last question. Again, here on this absentee things, it says if you're an absentee ballot, if you use your absentee ballot, you voted, will the sticker in the voter book be removed from the book? I think you said, Greg, it won't ever be there because it won't
Yeah,
get.
no, it won't get printed. So
Okay.
the voter books are just printed from the people who haven't already voted.
Okay, so I want to just, I don't see any more questions here. And if I've missed your question, then now is the time to send me a private vote or a message or to list it here. But I would like to say in summary that I have personally called, the Board of Elections almost every day for about 35 days. And they are extremely, Greg, please report this to the staff. They are polite, they are helpful, they answer the questions. They will tell you if you fax in your request for an absentee ballot, they will go look, they will find you, they will tell you, yes, I received your email, I received your mail or your fax. If they didn't, you can resend it, redo it. If you aren't a kind of person who wants to go online, or you have relatives who don't want to go online, they can call this number and they will talk to you on the phone and mail you the form. They will email it to you. They will fax it to you. They are extremely, extremely helpful. So you do not have to do anything other than remember 919-404-4040 if you want to request an absentee ballot, if you want to check on one, if you want to check on your voter registration. If you have any questions or concerns, there are more than people, Greg is one person, but they have a whole staff down there, 8 to 5 or 8:30 to 5 every day during the week, who can answer all of these questions. The last thing I did see, and I'm not quite sure I know what it means, but our early voting ballots sent to us personalized. Now,
Yeah,
I think they're talking about the absentee.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw it in the chat, and that's a great question. Yes, the ballot package that you get is personalized, and the ballot inside is personalized and matches the envelope that you used to send it back. In the last election, there was one situation. There was a couple who very diligently filled out their ballot, and they witnessed each other's ballot application, and they had a friend with them, but they ended up putting the wrong ballot in the wrong envelope and witnessing the wrong thing. So all the signatures were there, they were in the wrong places. So the husband's ballot was in the wife's envelope and the certification, and vice versa. And so it wasn't clear whether they witnessed their own ballots or not, which is not allowed. So both of those had to be denied. And I'm not sure if they had time. In those cases, whenever there's a problem, the voter's notified. And if there's enough time, they can be told that they can either vote early or they can vote on election day.
So I think that's really important to remember as we're closing, is that, I love what Greg says, early, early, early. This is truly the early bird gets the worm, because if you send in your request and you get your ballot in early and there are any problems, we've been told that the Board of Election staff will call you and let you know there's a problem. And you do have time to rectify that, to fix it in a variety of ways, perhaps by getting a new absentee ballot, or perhaps by just going to vote on election day. So I think that you're really good. Now, one of the things that someone says, are you in a larger indoor space at a higher risk of COVID? Voters are not required to wear a mask, by the way. So Greg can point out that as you go in to vote, you are encouraged to wear a mask. They will have masks there to give you if you choose to do so. They will have hand sanitizer. Everybody that works for the Board of Elections will be wearing a mask. I will tell you that if anybody's there volunteering with my party, they will be wearing masks. But Greg, they're not required, right? There's no law. And what do you think about Terry's question about, is a larger indoor space more of a problem? I think it's proximity. And but Greg, could you answer that, because you've been doing all the planning?
Yeah, so most of these larger spaces are actually, they're taller and have more volume. So not only, it's not like you just have more people crowded in the same space, they're all spread out 6 feet apart. And you have much more air volume. These are gyms. These are ballrooms. So not you're not all crowded in a sort of small space, and you can choose to go, 20 booths away and stay away from everybody else. There's going to be a greater opportunity to separate yourself from other people, especially if you vote between 8 and 10 in the morning.
Right. And again, thanks everybody for these great questions. And no, people are not required to wear a mask as they come in to vote, but I think it's really fabulous that the Board of Election is providing disposable masks if somebody wants one, and hand sanitizers all over the place, so we can do the best we can. I would say that a lot of people, Greg, have said they've asked for their absentee ballot because they think it's a good backup plan, because if they get sick, or if somebody in their family's sick, or they were forced into quarantine because of a COVID case in their family or their own self. So how do you feel about that? I mean, is it okay to have a backup plan? Are y'all okay with that at the Board of Election?
Yeah, we're fine. Just don't try to vote twice, please. It just makes things more complicated. But yeah, you can have it and say, okay, I'm confident that now I have this mail-in ballot for the next couple of months. I can choose to do that if something comes up. But just sort of, you can leave it behind. You're under no obligation to vote that ballot that's being mailed to you. And so if you decide that, your friends go to early vote and say, hey, it's great, let's kind of go on and do it together, you can do that.
So please, everybody, consider having a backup plan. I've encouraged everybody in my family to get an absentee ballot, because we do not know what the future holds over the next 6 weeks. Greg, people want to know, can we get a line for people who wear masks and one not? I do know that the Board of Elections chair told me, no, we cannot do that. We can't force people into behaviors that are not legally mandated.
Right. So the guidance is 6 feet of separation, or less than that, to wear a mask. So we're just going to maintain 6 feet of separation, and really trying to encourage people. I've had some requests people are offering to donate PPE to poll workers. By the time election day rolls around, it's kind of too late, because we already have to plan that our election workers have PPE. But a great thing would be to hand out masks outside the polling place to encourage people to wear them outside the polling place. So by the time they get in there, they really have no excuse. Lay a guilt trip on them, whatever.
Right. So our last question, I'm gonna give you one last question, because you've been such a great sport at answering some of these questions 2 and 3 times, and we apologize. We had people joining late, and this is really important to everybody. So I'm so proud of all the questions. But Greg, do you have enough paid workers? The people want to know what kind of burden that you have going on right now. Do you have enough people? Do you need more?
In Wake County, we are blessed with a supportive county commission, and we are one of the wealthier counties, and we also have a sort of good base of workers. Some of the other counties around the state, they're really struggling. We have enough workers sort of lined up for the slots, but the big unknown is how many people are going to drop before election day. And this is normal. Family situations occur, personal health, whatever. So we always expect that there will be a number of poll workers who can't make it on election day. So we always have backup. However, in the primary, we had an unusually high number of drop-offs. And so we're going to expect that before this election. And right now, we're still sort of asking for more people to volunteer, so that we have a deeper bench of people to draw from. But we're in better shape than a lot of counties.
Okay.
And then I know you're going to wrap it up, but I want to say, since I've been on MSNBC, people have been asking me for my autograph. If you really want my autograph, get a ballot, because it'll be on the bottom of every ballot.
Way to go.
So Greg, I do want to, on behalf of everyone here tonight, and thank you. We invited you at the very last moment, and you agreed to come. You've been very gracious with preparing for tonight and answering all the questions. And I think it's really wonderful. But I think that people need to understand that we can't do anything more than we're doing. The Board of Election is doing everything inside to keep the place clean. They will provide PPE equipment to all their workers. There's going to be lots of education materials posted on washing your hands, keeping your distance, wearing your mask. But it's a federal election. We cannot do more than what we have done. The governor does not get to overrule the federal laws. So we're just going to have to try to handle ourselves. I would say, as someone who's been trained in the voter protection side, and Greg, please join in the,
Sure.
or correct me if I'm wrong, but I really encourage everyone to not to argue or confront anyone at the polls over the rules. The staff know how to do the distancing. They're marking off the space, and they cannot enforce the mask. And please don't encourage any disruption at the polls, because that will actually hurt the democratic process.
Yeah, it is actually, it's an offense to interfere with the poll workers. And not many people know this, but judges, chief judges have the ability to deputize people with police powers if things get out of control. So it's a serious thing. It doesn't get used much, but if somebody starts causing trouble at a county board of elections meeting, there's actually authority in the law that says the county board can send somebody straight to jail without, you don't need the sheriff to come to arrest them for up to 30 days. I hope we don't have to do that.
No.
But there are a lot of laws on the books about interfering with judges. Now, usually judges try to work with people, they know each other and they exercise some discretion. But sometimes they are, they're stressed, and they also, even if they do want to answer your question and trying to help you, they don't want to be distracted from somebody else doing something nefarious. They don't want to be distracted from the person that looks a little bit odd and turns out it's James O'Keefe trying to vote twice and record everything on video. So yeah, that's a great point, Yvonne. Just please be considerate of the poll workers.
Right. And Greg, as we are saying our last goodbye to you, I don't know if anyone caught this earlier, but Greg on July 4th, 10 years ago, became a U.S. citizen. He hails from Ireland. And I think you're such a remarkable story to me, Greg, in terms of your life and your journey and coming to America and your whole quest on becoming a citizen. And now look at the role you're playing, such an important role as chair of the Wake County Board of Elections. And what a civil servant you are. And thank you so much. I know that we all stress you out with these crazy questions, our paranoia, but we just want to get it right. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you both very, very much. Yvonne, you really have found a new profession here in being a moderator and question asker. And Greg, on behalf of Livable Raleigh, I really want to thank you for being here tonight and working with us to give people advice on how to vote in a pandemic. Thank you for answering so many questions tonight, Greg. It means a lot to hear this information from a trusted source like you. Thank you.
Thank you.
In case anyone thinks of a question that they forgot to ask tonight, we've got a slide up here now that has some more information. You heard this number mentioned a few times and it was in the chat. It's very helpful. I called it yesterday. I had a question. I waited for about 5 minutes. I got my answer. Everything was just as smooth as it could be. So I encourage you, if you do have a question, just remember that they're open from Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5:15. Another thing that you could do is we've just launched a Vote 2020 site on the Livable Raleigh website, which is got a whole lot of information on how to register to vote, voting by mail, early voting, voting on election day. And there's a big and growing list of frequently asked questions. So please feel free to follow us on Livable Raleigh and join and visit our website. All the information from the website was really taken from the Wake County Board of Election site and the North Carolina State Board of Election. So it is consistent with all the answers that you've heard tonight. You just may want to take a little time and peruse through it so that you can enter the information the way you want. And of course, we'd love you to follow Livable Raleigh. Our mission is to inform and educate and engage. So if you want to join our mailing list, the address is up here, livableraleigh@gmail.com. Our website is at livableraleigh.com. And we're, of course, on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So I'd like to just say in closing here that the how to vote in a pandemic Q&A forum has been recorded. We had a little problem in the beginning with our recording, but we got most of this. And honestly, Greg, your answers just were crystal clear. And I think this is going to be a great recording for us to put on our YouTube channel for people who couldn't be here tonight. We'll post it on our website. And if anybody is interested in actually having a send a recording, please let us know, and we'll be happy to send it out. So please take care of yourselves and please stay healthy. If you keep talking this much, Greg, you're going to need to have more than ice cubes in your mouth, I think. Livable Raleigh believes that all residents of Raleigh should be able to live a full, dignified life of prosperity in a safe and innovative city. On behalf of my colleagues from Livable Raleigh, we thank you very, very much again, Greg, for being here, and for all the attendees who made time tonight to learn more about voting. Please get out to vote. Remember, your vote is your voice. Thank you very much.